It's time to discuss today's headlines, and we're starting with the shocking news from Liverpool. Yesterday, 47 people were injured after a car drove into crowds of football fans as 500,000 people lined the streets of Liverpool's Victory parade through the city.
Yeah, scenes of jubilation turned into horror after a car was seen speeding off as fans appeared to try and stop the driver. Minutes later, a people carrier was seen accelerating into supporters just after 6 p.m, driving down one of the city's main roads for about 200 yards before coming to a halt.
27 people were taken to hospital and 20 people were treated at the scene, with 4 children amongst the injured. And last night, Merseyside police confirmed that a 53-year-old man had been arrested and say the incident isn't being treated as terrorism.
The car stopped at the scene and a 53-year-old white British man from the Liverpool area was arrested. We believe him to be the driver of the vehicle. Extensive inquiries are ongoing to establish the circumstances leading up to the collision, and it is vital that people do not speculate or spread misinformation on social media. The incident is not being treated as terrorism.
We're joined by Nick Ferrari and Ashley James. Nick, what more do we know about this?
Unfortunately, Paddy, it's one of those stories that there's probably more questions than there are answers at the moment. The first part of the investigation has to focus on how the vehicle got into what is called a cordoned zone. Those familiar, and there'll be many, of course, people watching this now, that tragedy visited upon the great city of Liverpool yet again. This happens on Water Road, that's off Strand, the main road. As Merseyside police point out, they are not strangers to victory parades in Liverpool. It is a supremely successful football club, so they have these parades. So it is unlikely that there is a police slip here, Paddy Allison. What it is thought is, have some people removed a barrier and the motorist has then come down? Has he removed a barrier and the man who's been held suspect has come down? That is what the investigation must focus on. Interesting, just to remind your listeners, it was, of course, last year it was the same police force that was involved in the horrific story about those little girls at the Taylor Swift dance class. You remember the Southport dance class. I'm not going to name the killer because we want to remember the girls, not him. Merseyside police came in for a lot of criticism at that time for not releasing information more speedily. They were cleared, by the way, by an independent police review board who said Merseyside did everything right. But Paddy Allison, you'll have noticed a very different take this time. The senior officer coming out saying, we do know this is a 53-year-old man. He's a white British male. He is not associated with any terror group. So a very different stance to try and assuage locals' concern. But as you rightly said, Paddy, what should have been a day of unbridled joy, yet again a tragedy for Liverpool and its fans to confront.
Yeah, and as we know, as you touched upon earlier, Nick, Liverpool's an amazing city, full of wonderful people, and all our thoughts and prayers are with them there today.
Absolutely right. I don't need to remind you of why they made headlines in the past, what they need now, and I was speaking with the head of the local council. They need time. They need time for the police to investigate, for the locals to gather, and then to move on. And let's please, incredibly, Paddy, and you know, I'm speaking, it is remarkable that no one has lost their lives. We are very, very serious injuries, and it is horrific. But if no one actually loses their life, that is the tiniest positive we can take out of what should have been a day of great joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on Sunday, a ban on disposable vapes will come into force across the UK, but could it result in thousands of people going back to smoking? That's what reporters warned. Nick, what we're making of this?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because this is the problem we have is that young people are vaping. Now, Paddy, you could go back and say, well, we should tackle the shops that are selling them because it is illegal. But there is a responsibility. Now, if, as we all know, vaping is it's best to do without either. Paddy, I know you live a blameless life. I understand that. And I've watched it. I've watched it for years. No vaping, no alcohol ever passes your lips. So in a perfect world, but this has helped young people. If this actually means, as this report is suggesting, that people start smoking again, then it's that great law of unintended consequences, isn't it? You bring something out which on the surface makes absolute sense, but you don't realise what the results might be.
Ashley, won't it just mean that the people are going to buy more different vapes?
So I think the issue at the moment is that these disposable vapes are being flogged for 29p. So I think the concern is that people are going to be stockpiling them. So that is obviously a direct and unintended consequence of this ban, but it is a short-term consequence.
So hold on a minute, they're selling the the vapes at less price because
once
the ban
comes in, they're illegal, and then people will get fined. I've never vaped, but I think they're around £5. People that vape will know better than me.
I've just been told some £14, £7 and 29p. So you're going to, obviously...
Yeah,
you're going to go, I'll buy them all.
I think, like, the thing with this is that we did so much work around smoking, you know, getting rid of flavoured cigarettes to stop encouraging young people to smoke, getting rid of them, like, being visible on the shop floor, and I feel like vapes have kind of replaced that, and they're all pastel-coloured and they're all flavoured, and actually it is a gateway for youth nicotine addiction. We see so many young people with them, so I think in the short term, of course, that there will be consequences to it, but I am old enough to remember, believe it or not, the smoking ban, and there was that kind of, like, fear back then of what the consequences of smoking would be. There was all that talk of, like, behavioural displacement, or people going to gather round outside. And I think, you know, it's normal that there is going to be concern about what the impact is. But according to this survey, it's saying that 12% of users will say they'll switch from vaping to smoking. So it's not a huge amount. And also, I have personal concerns for all my friends that I know that vape, who did switch from cigarettes. They are vaping so much more than they used to smoke. So I think
remember, with a cigarette, it ends, doesn't it? With a cigarette, it ends. With a vape, it just goes on for ages.
And we still don't really know what the long-term, like, health consequences of vaping are. Like, we obviously see a few, like, horror reports about the impact, but I think it is a health scandal potentially in the future that we don't know about. And obviously there's the environmental impact as well, that these are single use. And, you know, I think for me, it's a very welcome ban, but it'll be interesting to see what the consequences are long term.
OK, well, let's move on to our next story. The boss of a UK pub and bar chain has warned that nightlife is at risk of dying out as young people opt for staying in an early nights. I'm with them, I am. Over late nights, drinking in bars. Is this the end of our nightlives? Nick, is it the end?
Well, again, I know bars and nightclubs are unknown to Paddy because of the blameless life that he's led, but if he were a younger man... No, come on, let's be honest. Let's be honest with each other. We are the generation... I mean, I'm older than you guys, but we did really let our lives revolve around clubs and bars, and I don't think it is the same with this new generation now.
Yeah.
While we can say... And Alison, of course there are health positives here. That's great if they're not taking on alcohol in perhaps the same level, if they're not smoking or whatever. There is, of course, you've got to remember, there are millions of people employed in this sector. So while that is a good thing that young people aren't drinking and there won't be the health, there is the problem of employment. And then there's, and I'm sorry to bring this in, and it seems to come in everywhere, there is the C word, there is COVID, the impact that people couldn't get out to clubs. I think a lot of socialisation was lost, which is a shame, because Ashley and I often talk on this show about how important it is to try and socialise young people. And here's another element that might, to a degree, be closing down.
I love when you said the C word, I thought, conservative.
I did. Social media is to blame for this, though, do you not think?
I mean, I loved a club back in the day, but I also think our drinking, like, habits were completely wild. So I think it's a really welcome thing, apart from yours, Paddy. There's also, I think things are shifting. There's now a lot more daytime events, sober clubs. Yeah. I've DJ'd at Ministry of Sound. So, no, I think... It's evolving, but I don't think it's the end.
What's our next story?
Now, a study has revealed that family breakdowns are at the highest level since records began, and that almost half of teenagers are living with only one birth parent by the time they're 14. Are families like these becoming the new normal, Ash?
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. So this study says that it's actually 45% of teens who are not living with both parents. So official figures thought it was 24% of parents, but what this is showing is that they don't factor in people who've met a new partner, so they're still not living with both parents, but they might live in a kind of, like, family dynamic.
Blended one.
So this is saying that the key component of a family breakdown is not divorce, which is at the lowest level since 1970, but actually the splitting up of unmarried couples with children. And I kind of take issue to this as an unmarried couple with children, because I think there's just as much chance that I would leave if I was married or not married, if my relationship wasn't working and I felt like that was having a detrimental impact on my children or on myself or on my partner. Luckily, I'm not in that situation, but lots of my friends have been. And I think we have to be so careful to kind of be nostalgic to the 1970s when couples maybe stayed together, because that was a very different landscape, a time where lots of people, especially women, didn't have the luxury of leaving because they couldn't buy houses without a man, they couldn't get bank loans. It was a time when, you know, marital rape and domestic abuse was less widely recognised. So I think in some ways it's good that people are able to leave if it's not working. Of course, two-parent households can provide more financial and emotional support, but I think a lot of studies show that actually staying in an unhealthy relationship is worse for the children if they're around a lot of conflict. And don't forget, children watch what love and healthy relationships are. So if their point of reference is an unstable or unhealthy or in some ways, in some cases, violent situation at home, of course it's better to leave than to stay in that situation. But I think what we're seeing is that if single households are more common than we initially thought, what support is there? Not only to support single-parent households, because we know that there are more economic challenges, that single parents take on the majority of the financial and emotional load, which could have an impact on their relationship with their child, because they're more likely to put their negative emotions onto that child. But also, what are governments doing to support couples so that maybe they're not splitting up? Because we all know that first 5 years of children's lives puts so much pressure on relationships, and I know that from how much our relationship has changed. So are governments making childcare affordable? Are they putting things in place to support couples to have children?
Can I just ask Nick? Nick, do you think it's sort of, as crazy as it sounds, modern society, I always feel like, no, everything's more disposable, everything's sort of quick. Do you think that's transcended into relationships because you can meet people really quickly now online as opposed to going out and forming that relationship and dating, and so sort of leaving someone's easier?
Spot on, I fear, Paddy. Look, I'm speaking as someone who is divorced. Both my sons were in their teens when I divorced my ex-wife, and I still have a sense of guilt. I'll be honest with you. No one goes into marriage, no one raises children think you're going to divorce their mother or their father. Having said that, am I in a better place? Undoubtedly. Are my children, hopefully, and indeed is my ex-wife. I sincerely hope she's in a better place. So we have to accept that this is, at times, this is now the new norm. And to your point, Paddy, I think... And many of the things are good, but we are a sort of we want it and we want it now society. We perhaps don't stick with it as long as we did. Although I would say, to Ashley's point, there's often now a financial prerogative or aspect for a couple. It doesn't matter whether you're married or whether you're not. Ignore that. But some people just cannot afford to divorce or split up because they've just not got enough money for the two of them to go on. So in some instances, and this doesn't work for anybody, they stay in the same house or the flat or the apartment because there's not enough cash in there for both to make them work. And that doesn't work for anybody because mum's not happy, dad's not happy, or both the dads aren't happy, the kids aren't happy, and that doesn't work. So to Ash's point, is there some sort of financial incentive? Possibly. To your point, Paddy, yes, I think we probably are a society now that expects answers far more quickly than we ever did.
I would just like to support younger people and say I don't think we see relationships as disposable, because nearly everyone I know is looking for that happy ever after. They are looking for that love story, but I think they just have the freedom to walk away if their expectations aren't being met, and maybe women's expectations are higher, which is good.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
OK, we're moving on. Now, do you do thank you notes or cards and things like that? Well, this new research has revealed that writing a letter or a thank you note could boost your mental health. Would you agree, Nick? I haven't had a letter from you lately, lovely.
The last letter you had was that Jamaican rum loaf that you made me, and it was incoherent, my response, because I was still recovering.
I think it just said, marry me.
Yeah, that's right. And you've left it too late, you know. I'm spoken for now. I grew up at the time when, and it was down to Mum insisted by, perhaps not Boxing Day, but before we got to New Year's Eve, all the cards had been written, or notes had been written to my aunts and my uncles, and they went in. Do you remember that? You bought a thing called a stamp, and you put it in an envelope.
Oh, my God.
I'd ask, I know, when did you last actually get a letter? I don't mean your council tax or whatever. When did you actually last receive a letter? So actually, in all honesty, I am quite good. Recently, we went away for a weekend with some friends, and I've got some stationery, so I did actually write a note, and I used the great trick that was, apparently I read this in a biography of the late Princess of Wales, Princess Diana. She would try and focus on a particularly nice moment or the food or the wine, and so she would write a thank you and would say, and wasn't that a lovely red wine you served, or wasn't it a lovely...
Oh, wow.
So you try and focus... Yeah, that was a trick. Well, I say trick, that was a nice a method that she would employ to show the personal touch.
Yes.
So I always try and do that. I particularly like your souffle. It's so much better than Alison's appalling Jamaican rum bread. And I just pop that.
Do you know,
I know
that's not true. Because I think there's nothing worse, like, especially at Christmas time, when you get the Christmas card message on your phone.
Yes.
It's so impersonal.
Yes, it is.
I love opening, especially off my kids, if they write you something. Like my youngest the other day, I came in the house, she ran over to me, give me a Post-it note. She went, read it when I leave the room. So I read it, it said, I'm going to come and jump on you and hug you. So I read it, and then she come round the corner and did it. It was the most beautiful thing
And you know, you
ever.
will keep that message forever.
Absolutely.
And the other day, I was literally going through my drawers, having a little tidy up, and I had a little note from my son from when he was about 6 years old, and it was the most beautiful message. And I showed him. He didn't remember giving it to me, but it was the most loveliest message.
Yeah.
You'll keep that message forever.
Absolutely.
You know what I noticed, though? I can hardly write. Can you write still, Ashley?
Do you know what? I've still got a lump on my finger from the writing days. Now I think it's more like a different lump from holding
I
a
literally
phone.
cannot write very well.
It's
My
funny,
writing's
innit?
You're out of practice, though, aren't you?
That's what
But
I am.
do. Do you know what? I do think like there's nothing better than a thank you letter.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Makes you feel
Love
good.
it.
Or
Love
a
it.
love note. Send
Old
a love.
school.
Put your
Old
perfume
school.
on it. A little love note. Do
We're
it.
all over that. No, this is a bit of a
Come on.
controversial one.
I'm
B&Q
ready.
have apologised after they described a bathroom cabinet as easy to assemble, even for a girl. What?
Rude.
The listing for the flat pack unit appeared on their website. Ashley.
I love that
It's
you've
easy
come to
even
me
for
and
you,
I'm
Ashley.
ready.
I could feel...
Do you know what?
the
I'm ready
anger.
for this one because I do DIY like a girl and I run like a girl and I throw like a girl and we automatically think that means not good,
bad, yeah.
worse. But actually, like
Not
when you
me,
look
by the
around,
way.
when you look around at like all the women exceeding in whether it's in sport or anywhere, like we are good. And if you look at like the statistics on driving, statistically, women are not worse drivers than men.
We're
So
better drivers because we actually listen. That's it.
Say no more, hey? But I think where this is... I mean, I think the bad thing about this is it comes after B&Q announced a campaign to showcase tradeswomen breaking down barriers. What do you think one of the barriers might be to women getting into trades? Probably these kind of outdated sexist attitudes. And it's reinforcing these myths that women are less competent. And it also... I think, like, perpetuates casual sexism, and we're so quick to dismiss things as just a joke or just banter, but actually there's a really fine line between, like, bigger issues being overlooked as banter when actually there's discrimination there. And I do all the DIY at home. I learnt to do all my DIY, and actually Tommy is rubbish. I'm sure he won't mind me saying.
Well, you were pointing, because my patio needs sorting. If you are available, get yourself up.
The fact that you've pointed, I will never do your patio, Paddy.
What? It's pointing. It's pointing now. You can't
didn't
point.
even say please.
Oh, Ashley,
You didn't
come
say
on.
please, Paddy.
Come
It's just
on.
manners. But if you write
Ashley, can I ask, darling? I'm going to put my hand up.
Oh.
Is it possible for you to come and help me do some tiles at my
Alison,
house,
you
please?
could point at me and I would still do it.
Nick, I wish you were here, Nick. I feel as though I need backup here.
You need to develop the politician's trick, Paddy, which is, do you see, they point like that, so you don't... Yeah, so they go like that, and then there's... Yeah, so
I feel
you'll be...
that's
all right.
worse.
Well, I know.
I think it's
Right,
just
B&Q... Terrible own goal. How was this ever signed off? But I will say this: any of your viewers who've ever tried to build a Hemnes daybed from IKEA, both my sons have degrees in engineering, and I needed them. I reckon that has probably broken up more relationships, the Hemnes daybed, than anything else. But this is a shocker. Should never have been allowed to go to press, ever.
Oh, yeah, but it's got good press for B&Q, ain't it?
Well, no, bad.
Oh,
It's
I don't know.
alienating all their female customers.
That's very true.
Hi, everyone.
Ashley,
Just
well,
wanted to say thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. Now, listen, we upload new content every day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. And we'll see you in the morning.